Capitalism is about to collapse. The end is closer than we think. Have you ever felt like something about the world doesn't quite make sense, but you can't put it into words? This video invites you to step beyond the surface and into a deeper psychological reflection. What if capitalism isn't just an economic system, but a mindset shaping every choice you make? What happens when that mindset begins to collapse? Through philosophy, history, and inner awareness, we'll explore the invisible forces guiding our lives and how to break free from them. If you're seeking not just answers, but a more conscious way to live in an unconscious world, this video is for you. Can capitalism last forever? Have you ever asked yourself if something could truly last forever? In a world where everything that rises must eventually fall, could capitalism follow the same inevitable path? And what if instead of being overturned by external forces, it is quietly digging its own grave? History has shown us that no system, no matter how robust it may seem, can last forever. But capitalism, with its endless drive for expansion and growth, has created a paradox. It is built on the idea of infinite growth, yet it faces the reality of inevitable limits. The pursuit of profit, the drive for consumption, and the quest for wealth have led us to this point of self-doubt and reflection. As we look at the world around us, we begin to ask, can a system that was once the driving force behind progress, innovation, and prosperity continue to endure in its current form? Perhaps the real question is not whether capitalism can survive, but whether we as individuals within the system are willing to let go of the idea that it is invincible. What if the real answer lies not in trying to preserve it, but in understanding the nature of its inevitable decline and embracing the possibility of a new way forward? The power to heal, to find meaning, and to awaken lies not in waiting for the system to change, but in changing ourselves, our perceptions, and the way we relate to the world around us. We must ask, how can we begin to break free from the grip of this system and start living with purpose, reclaiming our power and strength in the process? Capitalism, when there are no alternatives. We live in a time where it feels easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. This idea, expressed by cultural theorist Mark Fisher, captures a profound psychological reality. Capitalism has become more than an economic system. It has turned into the lens through which we interpret life itself. From the choices we make to the values we pursue, the logic of the market has infiltrated every part of our lives. We are taught to compete, to consume, to measure our worth by our productivity and wealth. The system does not only govern our external structures, but shapes our internal landscapes as well. Our thoughts, desires, and even our identities are influenced by this invisible framework. This is what Fisher called capitalist realism, the belief that there is no viable alternative to the system we live in. But is this belief truly grounded in reality? Or is it a product of collective conditioning? What if our sense of hopelessness is not proof of capitalism's strength, but of our disconnection from deeper sources of meaning? To begin healing, we must first question this illusion of inevitability. The moment we believe that change is impossible, we surrender our inner freedom. But by reclaiming the ability to imagine a different world, we begin to reclaim ourselves. Healing in this sense is not about escaping the system, but about recovering the clarity to see beyond it. When we allow ourselves to dream of another way of being, we open the door to resilience, awareness, and transformation. The system may feel permanent, but our minds and hearts are not bound to it. They are still capable of awakening. History shows nothing lasts forever. Throughout time, every empire, every system, every dominant belief has eventually met its end. To those who lived within them, these structures seemed eternal, immovable, part of the very fabric of existence. The feudal system ruled Europe for centuries. And to the people of that era, a world without lords and vassals was unthinkable. Yet change did come. The Roman Empire, vast and powerful, collapsed not only from external pressures, but from the weight of its own internal contradictions. This historical truth reminds us that permanence is often an illusion. No system, however deeply entrenched, is immune to transformation. And yet we often view capitalism as an exception, as if it somehow exists outside the flow of history. But history is not static. It is a living process shaped by choices, crises, and awakenings. When we forget this, we lose the ability to act, to question, and to imagine. The illusion that capitalism is eternal is not only a misunderstanding of history, but a subtle form of psychological paralysis. If we believe that things cannot change, we stop searching for new ways to live. Healing begins when we reclaim our historical perspective. We recognize that the systems we live under are not natural laws, but human creations. And what has been created can be reimagined, reformed, or even replaced. By seeing the rise and fall of past structures, we begin to trust that transformation is possible. Not easy, not immediate, but possible. This belief, grounded in the truth of history, can restore our strength, renew our hope, and guide us toward a future that does not repeat the mistakes of the past. Technology, friend or foe. Technology has always been a double-edged force. On one hand, it has driven human progress, allowing us to solve problems, expand our reach, and improve our quality of life. On the other, it has often served as a tool for controlling inequality and disconnection. Within the framework of capitalism, technology becomes more than innovation. It becomes a mechanism for acceleration, for efficiency, and for profit. As automation and artificial intelligence advance rapidly, we are approaching a turning point where machines may no longer support human labor, but replace it altogether. The capitalist promise of better lives through innovation is colliding with the reality where humans are increasingly pushed to the margins of the system they created. What happens when value is no longer tied to human effort? What becomes of meaning when productivity is outsourced to algorithms? These are not just economic questions. They strike at the heart of what it means to live with purpose and dignity. The more we rely on machines to think, decide, and produce, the more we risk losing the very capacities that make us human. Healing in this context means reclaiming our agency in a world of growing automation. It means choosing where we place our attention, how we use technology, and whether we let it define us or serve us. Technology itself is not the enemy, but our unconscious surrender to it is. If used with awareness, it can support our growth, connection, and even our spiritual awakening. But if left unchecked, it may lead us into a world where control is masked as convenience and identity is lost to algorithms. The choice is not whether technology will shape us, but how consciously we will shape our relationship with it. Accelerating. The road to survival or destruction. Capitalism has always thrived on speed. Each innovation, each leap in productivity, each market expansion has pushed the system to move faster. Faster production, faster consumption, faster returns. This acceleration has been seen as a sign of progress, of strength, of unstoppable momentum. But what if this very speed has become unsustainable? Just as in physics, where the faster something moves, the more energy is needed to control it, capitalism may have reached a velocity where control slips away. We are not just dealing with economic systems now. We are inside a machine that feeds on movement, and it may no longer have brakes. This brings us to a profound dilemma. Should we try to slow the system down, reform it from within, or should we accelerate it further to the point where it breaks under its own pressure? Some thinkers argue that only by pushing capitalism to its limits will it reveal its true nature and collapse. But there is danger in that path. If we only accelerate without reflection, we risk becoming passengers in a vehicle racing toward a cliff. Healing in this moment means pausing in the rush. It means recognizing that true strength does not lie in speed, but in awareness. That the future we want cannot be built on urgency alone, but on vision and care. Acceleration may feel inevitable, but it is not destiny. We can still choose how to respond. We can step back, take a breath, and ask ourselves what kind of life we truly want. One that moves endlessly forward without direction, or one that moves with purpose, presence, and peace. This choice is not just economic. It is existential. A system that doesn't need humans, a future without us. As automation, artificial intelligence, and digital systems evolve, capitalism begins to take on a life of its own. Once the system depended on human labor, consumer needs, and social interaction, now algorithms predict our behavior, machines replace our work, and data replaces dialogue. The logic of profit continues, but increasingly without us at its center. The terrifying possibility emerges. What if capitalism no longer needs people? Not as workers, not as consumers, not even as decision makers. If machines can produce and purchase without human input, then the system can perpetuate itself in a closed loop. This scenario is no longer science fiction. It is forming slowly beneath the surface of everyday convenience. The consequences are existential. If we are no longer necessary to the system, we are left to question what role, if any, we still play. Our value has long been measured by utility, productivity, and economic contribution. Without these, we are forced to rediscover a deeper meaning. This is where healing begins. It is in this void of utility that a different kind of worth can emerge. Not based on output, but on presence. Not on profit, but on purpose. A future without us at the center of capitalism might be frightening, but it also opens a door to reclaim life beyond function, to explore identity beyond occupation. If the system no longer sees us as essential, then perhaps we can finally see ourselves clearly. The path ahead is uncertain, but we are not powerless. In fact, the moment we are freed from being cogs in the machine is the moment we can choose who we want to become. Psychological crisis. Knowing it's wrong but can't stop. There is a silent tension that defines our time. Many people sense that something is deeply wrong with the way we live, work, and relate to one another. We know the pace is too fast. We feel the emptiness behind constant consumption. We see the damage to our environment, our minds, our relationships, and yet we keep going. Like passengers on a speeding train with no brakes, we are aware of the danger but unsure how to stop. This is not simply a social or economic issue. It is a psychological crisis, a disconnection between what we know and how we act, between our inner truth and our outer behavior. This crisis is marked by exhaustion, anxiety, and numbness. We scroll through news of collapse while ignoring our own burnout. We chase productivity while losing touch with our own needs. We long for stillness, but fear what might surface in silence. To heal from this crisis, we must first name it. We must acknowledge the gap between our values and our habits. True strength is not found in pushing through, but in pausing long enough to feel what is real. Only then can we begin to change. Rebuilding inner resilience means learning to say no, to slow down, to set boundaries that protect our energy. It means remembering that we are more than our roles, more than what we produce or achieve. In a world that tells us to keep moving, healing is an act of quiet rebellion. It is the moment we choose presence over pressure, depth over distraction. And from that moment, a new way of being can begin to grow. What can we do? Reflecting on ourselves. In the face of overwhelming systems and accelerating crises, it is easy to feel powerless. The scale of the problems around us often leaves us frozen, unsure of where to begin. But transformation does not start with changing the world. It begins with changing our relationship to it. The most radical act in a world built on distraction is to pause and reflect, to ask honestly what kind of life we are living and whether it aligns with the values we quietly hold. This is not about grand gestures or immediate answers. It is about returning to the foundation of self-awareness. When we take the time to examine our thoughts, our habits, and the stories we tell ourselves, we begin to see how deeply the system lives inside us. True change must start here. It must begin with reclaiming our attention, our time, and our choices. We must ask, what are we investing our energy in? What drives our actions? Is it fear or freedom, survival or meaning? Reflecting on ourselves is not a retreat from the world, but a return to what is most essential. It allows us to act from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. Healing grows from this space. Inner strength develops not by resisting every challenge, but by understanding our own patterns and shifting them with care. The more we know ourselves, the more we can move with intention. In times of uncertainty, the most powerful thing we can do is not to fix everything, but to become someone who acts from awareness. From that place, even the smallest choice can become revolutionary. The end of capitalism, what comes after? If capitalism were to collapse tomorrow, what would rise in its place? This is a question both frightening and liberating. For many, it is difficult to imagine life beyond the system we know. Capitalism has shaped not only our economies, but our identities, our dreams, and our fears. The thought of its end feels like the loss of structure, of safety, of meaning. But history tells us that every end is also a beginning. New ways of living, relating, and organizing have always emerged from the ruins of old systems. The collapse of one world can become the soil in which something more human, more conscious, and more compassionate begins to grow. To explore what comes after capitalism is not to fantasize about utopia. It is to engage in a serious act of imagination and responsibility. It is to ask what kind of society truly supports human well-being. What kind of economy respects life rather than exploits it? What kind of culture values connection more than competition? We do not need perfect blueprints, but we do need courage to envision alternatives. Healing at this stage means breaking the mental cage that tells us this system is eternal. It means reclaiming the ability to dream of something different, something deeper. If we do not imagine what could come next, we risk becoming passive witnesses to collapse. But if we begin to envision and embody a new possibility, we become participants in a transformation already underway. The end of capitalism, then, is not just an ending. It is a call to awaken to what we want to create next. Transition or collapse, who will lead? Every system reaches a tipping point. When its internal contradictions grow too large to contain it, either transforms or collapses. Capitalism, pushed to its extremes, now stands at such a threshold. We can already see the cracks. Environmental devastation, mental health crises, growing inequality, and a loss of collective meaning. These are not isolated problems, but signals that the foundation is no longer holding. And yet, amidst this instability, a deeper question emerges. Will we simply wait for the structure to fall, or will we guide its transition into something new? This is not just a question for politicians or economists. It is a question for each of us. Who will take responsibility for shaping the future? Who will dare to imagine systems rooted in care, equity, and balance? The answer begins within. We cannot lead transformation in the world if we have not first awakened within ourselves. To guide transition is to embody the values we wish to see emerge. It means listening more deeply, acting more consciously, and connecting more authentically. Healing becomes a form of leadership. When we heal our wounds, we create space for others to do the same. When we shift our inner landscape, we quietly shift the collective one. We may not control the timing of collapse, but we can influence the direction of what comes next. The future will not be led by those who cling to power, but by those who can hold complexity with compassion. Those who are willing to question, to grow, to break old patterns, and build something wiser. The real leaders of the transition are not always loud or visible. They are those who walk forward with clarity and heart, even in the midst of uncertainty. Capitalism self-destructs, irreconcilable internal contradictions. Capitalism is often portrayed as endlessly adaptable, capable of surviving crises by reinventing itself. Yet beneath this flexibility lies a core instability. The very logic that drives capitalism, endless growth, competition, and accumulation, also plants the seeds of its own unraveling. As wealth concentrates in fewer hands, as the planet is pushed beyond its ecological limits, as human labor becomes obsolete in the race for automation, the system begins to strain under contradictions it cannot resolve. These are not temporary malfunctions. They are signs of a deeper fracture between what the system demands and what life can sustain. This tension reveals a truth we often avoid, that the same engine, which once brought prosperity, now accelerates inequality, burnout, and environmental collapse. We see this in rising mental health crises and growing distrust toward institutions, in the sense of spiritual emptiness that no material gain can fill. These fractures are not only external, but deeply internalized. Many of us carry a silent pressure to perform, to achieve, to stay relevant, even as the system offers less in return. Healing in this context means recognizing that our exhaustion is not a personal failure. It is a response to a system misaligned with human needs. To step back from this pressure is not weakness, but wisdom. To rest is to resist a culture that equates worth with productivity. The collapse of capitalism may not come in a single dramatic moment. It may be a slow disintegration, visible in disconnection, in apathy, in lives lived under constant stress. But in naming the cracks, we reclaim the power to choose something different, something more humane, more balanced, more alive. Surviving in a chaotic world. In a world that feels increasingly unstable, survival is no longer just about physical safety or economic security. It is about emotional endurance, mental clarity, and spiritual resilience. We are bombarded with information, overwhelmed by crises, and often left alone to make sense of it all. The noise is constant, the demands are relentless, and the pressure to keep up can become unbearable. In such a world, to survive is not to harden, but to stay open. It is not to escape, but to remain grounded in what is real. True survival today means knowing how to protect our energy, nurture our minds, and care for our hearts. This begins with choosing what we let in. Not every crisis deserves our attention. Not every narrative reflects our truth. To stay balanced, we must learn to filter, to focus, to reconnect with our inner compass. We need to ask ourselves what nourishes us, what drains us, and what we must release to remain whole. In times of chaos, clarity becomes an act of resistance. Stillness becomes strength. Survival is not about reacting to every storm, but about building a place inside where peace is not easily shaken. Healing in this context means reclaiming simplicity. It means remembering what matters, returning to daily practices that restore us, breathing, resting, creating, connecting. It means letting go of the illusion that we must fix the world alone. The truth is, we survive together, in community, in care, in shared humanity. When we tend to our inner world, we create ripples in the outer one. Even amidst collapse, we can choose to become a source of calm, of depth, of meaning. That is what survival can look like now. Action after awakening. Shaping your own future. Awareness is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. Once we see the cracks in the system, once we feel the dissonance between the life we live and the truth we sense, we are faced with a choice: to go back to sleep or to stay awake. Awakening is uncomfortable. It asks us to let go of illusions, to confront uncertainty, and to question everything we were taught to accept. But it also opens space to imagine, to create, to move in new directions. This is where action begins, not from panic, not from perfection, but from presence. Shaping a new future does not require a grand revolution. It requires integrity in the small things. It means making choices that align with your values even when no one is watching. It means building relationships rooted in honesty, living at a pace that honors your energy, and refusing to measure your worth by external standards. These are not passive acts. They are quiet forms of resistance. When enough people live this way, cultures shift, systems change. Healing is not just about mending what is broken, but growing something more resilient in its place. This is your invitation, not to save the world alone, but to take responsibility for your part in it, to become a living example of the world you want to see, to embody the balance, compassion, and clarity that the future needs. You will not do it perfectly. No one does. But each step you take in awareness is a seed. Each act of care, each refusal to comply with a harmful norm, each moment of courage helps shape a different path. Awakening without action fades, but awakening followed by commitment becomes transformation. The end of capitalism may not be a sudden collapse, but a quiet unfolding already in motion. What matters now is not only what comes after, but who we choose to become in the face of change. In a world longing for healing, clarity, and meaning, your awareness is not a weakness, it is your power. The future is not written yet. It lives in your questions, your courage, and the quiet steps you take today.